Alright, hey guys, so I wanted to go over my process of this drawing from beginning to end so I can probably give you guys some insight, pretty much how I go about drawing, thought process, all of that good stuff. Unfortunately, there's no speed paint because at some point my brain caught off and was like, I don't want to hit record, but know that next time there will be a time lapse. I'm actually working on a Nana drawing, which thankfully is a time lapse. Yippee! I can't wait to show you guys how that looks. I did get a lot of screenshots throughout the process, and I can go through each one and just explain to you what was going through my mind. We'll just do a quick look through to see everything all the way to the end. So yeah, we can get started. I have my references over here. So I wanted to talk firstly about the pose. I went for this one over here. I wanted a more serious look. I actually have used this before in another drawing, but it didn't work out too much. I think it fits better here for what I'm doing. These are the rest of the references. This will make sense later on in the drawing. Monkey over here because I referenced the monkey's tail. So you'll see how that goes because his tail actually gets more realistic throughout the drawing. For the hair inspiration, I ended up going with cosplayers and Final Fantasy. So cosplayers usually, depending on their style, because they have a style when they're cosplaying, some people do a one-to-one. Like they'll make the whole like Goku hairstyle and everything. But I wanted to look for one that was more realistic. They tried to form their hair into the style or they tried to just do a more realistic look. So this is how I was able to come up with that. And then the use of like Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy I feel like is another good one to reference because they just have such exaggerated hairstyles. But when you go into 3D or even some of the illustrations, I just think it's executed really well. And you can make a really good balance with that. If you're ever looking at reference, depending on your style, that might be a good one to look at. This is just a sketch. If you can see through the other drawings, when I click through, I don't do line art. It's just me cleaning it up until it looks how I want it to look, right? I used to do line art. Now, whenever I do the comic and stuff, it'll most likely be line art or something. I don't know. It depends. But nothing wrong with doing line art. It's just not for me in my process. I just kind of skip that whole thing and I go straight to painting because that's just what works for me. There's also specific character details that I wanted to mention as well because I did have to ask friends and get some answers about certain stuff or they were able to point out different things, right? Because I watched Dragon Ball. I watched Dragon Ball Z mostly growing up out of order. And anytime I turned the TV on, it was like the Cell arc. And I just sighed because I hated seeing that every time, bro. But whatever. So my friend, I showed him this drawing when it was in the sketch phase. And actually, at first, the Dragon Ball was a 1 star. He ended up letting me know, like, hey, you should probably do 4 star Dragon Ball. I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. I corrected that because that's just the era at which I was drawing Goku. So, you just try to pay attention to little things like that. Yeah, that's a sketch. So we move on to the next one here. Here's where shadow and light come into play. So usually how I go about this, right? When I first was putting in the shadow and light, you put a skin tone down and then I would go in with the gradient tool over here. And I would go in with a shadow from right here with the gradient tool, take the gradient tool, pick a lighter color and go in with light. And so then you can start to kind of carve out where you want the light to sit. And that's kind of what I did. Now the problem lies within it's now like to me kind of bad lighting. It's blown out. It's the brightness and contrast. It's too high. Which it looked fine at first. And I think you could work with this, but that's not the style I was going for. Like, and I don't know. I love high contrast, but when I took a break and I came back, I was like, ooh, that looks kind of insane. So we're gonna change that. So the muscles, you can see those coming in. Honestly, they don't look too good right now. Like if we go back to the sketch, they look pretty okay right here. They look fine. When you get here, it was a lot of pulling up back references, trying to figure out where everything sits, and also trying to just stay within the same like body type so I can get a good back reference and arm reference. The glass ball as well, that is now kind of rendered in, and so you can see it's really rough because there's some blue here, blue reflecting off here, blue reflecting off here, and blue on the tail because by that point I had the sky that I had referenced back here. Reflection of the sun coming off the ball as well. Again, remember just the different textures that you have in a drawing. You got glass here, skin, fabric, pants, a tail. At first I did think about making his tail the same color as his hair. I didn't like it too much. I just wanted to stick with how they had it in the anime, at least for that. But by this time, I was kind of color picking a little bit, but I didn't like the colors being picked. I didn't like the colors I was even referencing because I felt like it was just too, again, it's too bright. It just didn't fit with my style and what I was going for. Also, you'll see later on. So I did use a hand reference over here. I referenced my own hands actually. Honestly, I don't know how I even took a picture of that angle when I was referencing my hands, but it happened. It's just getting a good balance between your realistic style and then drawing anime, something that's already simplified. So then when you try to translate that, it's a little bit, it can be a bit odd. It can get a little weird, if you will. So we'll move on to this one. You can look back here, kind of see a difference, slight color changes. So we were able to correct the issue with the colors. So we'll focus on the color in his face and everything. I was able to go in with a multiply layer and I had it on like a orangey reddish color. And then I casted it over the drawing so that way we can tone down that brightness that he had. Other problems arise throughout this, but I'll get to that in a second. Then we were able to get more color in his face, like light blue down here, around here. I'm pretty sure he's had a beard before, so just really getting the planes of the face out where everything should be and everything should fall, purple around the eyelids. But that's how I was able to kind of just correct. I also go in, let me see here, color balance. And this helps a lot, changing how warm it is, how cold it is. Sometimes it could be more green, and I really wanted a good balance. I wanted all the colors to balance out, so I was able to find a good in between while also putting that multiply layer over. Another good layer is overlay. So when I'm going from this to color and I end up having still black lines, you can kind of go over with like an overlay and add color into that. Like, so the lips here were sketched in gray, but when you go in with overlay, I think that's mostly when your layers are combined or so. You can add color in there. I guess it just kind of helps to skip a process there, and still continue to render what you already have there from that sketch. And yeah, there's a light reflection off the ball, so that's more defined now because all the light's coming this way, all the shadows coming from back here. So we got a nice little highlight around here. It's just more vibrant, just more bright. And I think you'll see the color still change a bit more with this, with the ball, because I really wanted to differentiate the red stars from the orange. Or at least this is still orange. I think it's just a different type of orange color. And yeah, he does have, is there some stubble? Not yet, but that'll be in the next one. Palms of his hand. Uh, these have more definition, lines. Your hands, they have lines, but again, this depends on your art style too. You might not feel the need to put all that detail on the palm of the hand, but just remember that there's two sides. You got your knuckles, you have usually one side is a bit darker. Palms of your hand are going to be very light, and it just makes it look not flat as well. So you don't want it to be too flat. And then was the pants leg. So we ended up switching that up here, and instead of just lines coming down, trying to reference the pants like he has over here, I just go realistically for how pants are. Then again, I think this is a different style of pants now that I'm looking back at it, but we'll come back to that later on. I put a seam here because pants usually have a seam right there as well. And then, yeah, the eyelids. So we come up here. So obviously, when I was drawing Goku, um, I think I wanted him to look more so Asian. So when you go through here, you can see it looked fine. I mean, it was still in the sketch phase. And then we get here, and there's just a sharp lid, and that's not what I wanted. I knew something was off there. And also, the nose will change over time. You'll see it kind of dip down more than this, I think, because this comes out. I didn't want it to come out that much. I think it will come out and dip in here, but this will be smoothed out because you can even see in here. It's very smooth. So also when you're drawing people with different races and everything, even though I'm pretty sure it was like an alien, but we move on. The point is just pay attention to specific features you might see on people in general. So the next one, you can see here we have ear details, tail details, and a background finally in place. Very nice, solid background that I did end up getting help with on that. I love how the Dragon Ball looks now. It's very much, once again, more defined, more clean and smooth. I did go in with the circle tool and just circled it, erase this part, let the palm sit right there under it, just to give more depth. You really want it in there because right here it was just sitting there like that. So, just make sure to go back in and be like, okay, so how would this sit in the palm? And then the pants are more defined. I want to show it kind of just dragging down. It's dragging down. There's some weight to them. And so I did a mixture of the seam here and then how his pants fall. Sometimes we just have to take certain things out the drawing and then add them back in, and it'll make sense later on, right? The muscles. So the muscles got better as well. I'm very happy with that. There was a lot happening here. Did not like it, but we smoothed some things out. I went in with the blend brush and I softened up those lines because this is skin. This is skin touching skin right here. And so you just kind of, you want to make it look plump, I guess is the word. Very like skin's touching, like it's being squished. We also added hair on the arms here, going up to here. So I kind of just looked up people with like hairier arms, and I just think it works for Goku a lot. Veins were added in, that adds some depth because he's a muscular dude. So we also think about that. Like, does your character, have veins showing? When you're doing very detailed portraits like this, um, if you're doing a comic, probably won't see all of that unless it's like a really close up shot of something. Like I said here, you can tell with his features, just going back and forth, they are more just smoothed out. They make more sense. We got some stubble going in here, and then what I love to do is go in with the texture brush. That's where texture came into play. And when you get into the shadowy areas, the darker areas, I love to add some texture. I don't know what it is. I feel like it just adds something really good all around here, and even on the arm underneath the hair. And for the hair, I actually used a mixture of like a pre-made hairbrush and then actual strokes from the pencil because hair falls a certain way on the arm and lays off to the side. So you really want to get that where hair might just kind of flow together and clump up right there. And that's what I did, and kind of slowly trail it up. And you can tell from the reference of the monkey tail, like there's some skin. There's some skin. So you want to have like a little transparent thing kind of happening, right? Flare the hair out. And then we're also going to get into the background now because I did mention that I had a friend help me with like just directing the drawing, which she should be an art director. I know she's watching this video. And so the flying nimbus, so there's some things that she pointed out for me. It was off. And I could tell something was off, but I didn't know what was off yet, right? And I thought, hey, if I keep rendering this pterodactyl, maybe it'll work itself out. No. Right here, where the trail of the flying nimbus is on the left. Pterodactyl's on the left, and then even the trail still goes down and around like this. It's not making much sense. It's not really flowing throughout the drawing. So we'll see the change in the last one in a little bit. But we have the light coming in here, and just kind of some clouds I just threw in using any old brush, and it's just not fully where it should be. So we'll move on to the next one. And here you can see the corrections. You kind of have this more engulfed. Since it's further back, you can kind of erase some of that because it's just way back there, the pterodactyl, which is also referenced from the show. Very early characters that I don't think they pop up anymore. I'm not sure, but my friends told me to put that in there, and not a lot of other people have that in their fan arts, I think, from what they were looking up. So it was a fun little thing to put in there. But, we added another one. You can just do a little scribble here. And when you zoom out, it just looks really fine. Looks really good. We have him really engulfed in the drawing. Instead of him just looking like he's sitting on top of the drawing, he's in the environment. And I was able to capture that with her help and her telling me. And we have the trail of the flying nimbus coming around throughout the drawing, leading you through the drawing. And I think that's an important thing to have here, right? Other little details, we have more reflection from the light coming down, right? And just a very harsh light right there. A bit of highlight on the nose, the face. And you notice here, we didn't have a lot going on with the shadows. Like we had it there and we had it defined, but to really put him in the environment, he's up in the sky where the sun is. There's some rim light around here. And then there's a shadow from behind him, you know. So all the light's coming this way and then everything else is over here. So you just gotta remember and kind of think about the environment. Pull out maybe like a 3D model, recreate the setting, and just kind of figure out where that light's gonna hit. More clouds all around here. The flying nimbus is more kind of, and I like what I did for this because the flying nimbus is like in the anime is very different from the rest of the clouds. Obviously, it's just a puffy ball that's more defined. But for this one, with my style, I wanted it to be kind of engulfed with the clouds, but still different enough as well. No matter where you look, it's just gonna flow all the way through. So you come over here, it's just gonna lead back down. You look over here, it's just gonna lead you right through the drawing, anyways. We got Piccolo on the top right because they were like, oh, have him aura farming in the back. But, you know, I didn't say that. They wanted that in there. So there he goes. So I really enjoyed working on this, just getting all the little details down. Hopefully, I explained everything. I tried to make a list. Okay. So that helped me really get through that. So I'm gonna try to keep doing that because it'll keep me organized. But towards the end, I didn't really have a list. So I'm getting a bit jumbled. Either way, if you have any questions, that I did not address in this. Anything that you notice, anything that you want me to answer, I'll go through and talk about it. But I hope you guys having a great day. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said before, I am on Patreon. Try to stream on Twitch when I can. Links are in the description. And yeah.